Hello students, Mr. Young here. Welcome to Chapter 7, Lesson 4, Part 2. Today is essentially the Peloponnesian War. So after the Greco-Persian War, the city-states of Greece discovered that it was important for their survival that they work together. It makes sense. It's the only way they are able to defeat the Persians. The sum of the parts was somehow greater than the sum of the whole. So even with the Persian horde of Xerxes defeated, Persia remained a threat to Greece. So to combat this Persian threat, in 478 BC, Athens formed a defensive league, kind of like modern NATO. The headquarters for this league was found on the island of Delos, and so it was called the Delian League. Athens supplied the league with most of its soldiers, and most of the sailors, and other city-states provided money and ships. Over the next few decades, the Delian League drove Persia out of the Anatolia region, leaving Greece free to prosper. It's sort of a golden age of Greece. So the Delian League had a big problem that would actually lead to its collapse. See, it was dominated by Athens. Most of the soldiers were Athenian, as were most of the sort of military leaders and most of the officials, mostly Athenian. Athens and its leaders, Pericles, we talked all about Pericles, began to use his influence of being mostly in charge of the Delian League to influence and boss around other member city-states, essentially. It became less of an alliance of equal city-states and more like an Athenian empire. It went so far, Athens that is, to move the League's treasury to Athens and sending their troops to other city-states to help spur revolts against the nobles. So not good practice here. Other city-states began to see the growing economic and political power of Athens, and this basically began to worry them, especially Sparta. You remember from earlier in the chapter that Sparta and Athens were opposite in any number of ways. Sparta and Athens came to a head in 431 BC. You see Athens began to meddle in the affairs of one of Sparta's allies, and Sparta was essentially pressured to attack. This started the Peloponnesian War, which would last from 431 to 404 BC, so that's decades. This chunk of Greece right here, this big island part, is called Peloponnese. That's why it's called the Peloponnesian War. So during the war, at a large ceremony to remember the fallen soldiers of Athens, Pericles delivered what is called the funeral oration. It's a famous speech. In this speech, Pericles talked about the glory that is Athens and the importance of democracy and civic duties, like voting and taking part in the political process. He urged them to stay strong and keep fighting. A lot of the things he mentioned, things like civic duty, are keystones to democracies today. This is a picture of the actual funeral oration. You see it pop up all the time in Google when you search for Greece. So Pericles knew that his soldiers were no match for Spartans in open combat. So the Athenians holed up behind the walls of Athens. They used their mighty navy to keep the city well stocked with food and supplies. This worked well for 2 years. Then a plague burned through the city, killing 1/3 of the population, including Pericles. Over the course of the next 25 years, both sides won victories, but no one could win the war. The stalemate was eventually broken when Sparta made a deal with Persia. Sparta would give Persia Greek lands in Anatolia, and in return, Sparta was given enough gold to build their own navy. With this new navy, Sparta defeated the Athenian navy and blockaded the city, cutting off all supplies. After a year of this blockade, Athens was forced to surrender, and the Athenian Empire collapsed. And now, the funny thing is, Sparta ruled basically as Athens had. The harsh rule of Sparta angered many, including their former allies. Sparta spent the next decade quashing rebellions and fighting Persians. Sparta was finally taken out by the city-state of Thebes, sort of a large city-state that we don't really talk about. We pretty much handle Sparta and Athens, but Thebes was pretty well as well. But after Sparta was taken out by Thebes, then 10 years later Thebes collapsed. The whole period of war and disease in Greece, Peloponnesian War. Left the whole continent of, well, the whole peninsula of Greece in a weakened state, which would allow Macedonia from the north to roll in and take the famous Greek independence once and for all. We're actually going to talk about Macedonia in the next chapter. So, simple assignment today. Please answer the following questions using complete sentences and in paragraph form. Submission type assignment. Who fought in the Peloponnesian War? Who won? And how did they win? So, all stuff we just went over. That's it. Let me know if you need any help. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.